Hello and welcome to the first video in my Java tutorial series. This is just the basic getting started tutorial. Okay, to start we're going to create a new Java project in your IDE of choice. It doesn't matter really. I'm going to use IntelliJ because it's my favorite. You can use Eclipse, NetBeans, whatever you want. Just new project. It's pretty self-explanatory. But once you've done that, you just right-click on source, hover over new, move your pointer over to the side and click Java class. And then you give your Java class a name. I'm just going to call it main, which is what you should call your first class because it's best practice. There we go. Okay. So now the first thing you have to do in every Java file that you make is you have to make a main method. Now we'll go over what that means later, but for now you just do public static void. I could probably make this bigger. There we go. Public static void. You call it main. And then just like that. And inside of these parentheses, you write string, open and close brackets, and then args. Great. And then it should complete like that, no errors. There we go. So this is the start of every Java project. Every Java project has a main class, and every Java project has a main method. Inside of this main method is everything that will run first. We'll get more into what methods are later, but for now, you just know this as the place where you put your code. And this is the method that runs first. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to learn about in Java, and the first thing that you will generally learn in most programming languages, is print statements. Essentially, what a print statement is it allows you to print to the screen. So you're going to be able to write this out, and then it's going to show in the console window whatever you want it to show. It's a very useful thing, especially for your early projects, which are going to be predominantly running inside of the console window. So how this is done in Java is with this line of code right here, system.out.println hello world. And what this will do is it will print hello world to the console. Now let's go take a look at that inside of the IDE. Okay, so inside the IDE, what we're going to do to start is just type out that line that I showed you in the other screen, system.out.println, and then usually the autocomplete picks up on it, and then open and close parentheses, and then end it off with a semicolon. Pretty much all lines in Java end with a semicolon, except for ones like these that have curly brackets, which just means you put code inside of them. But as a common rule of thumb, any single line you write in Java, it's going to have a semicolon at the end, most likely. So now, in order to have this actually print something, like hello world, as the typical example is, inside of here you do quotation marks, and inside the quotation marks you write whatever string you want to print, which is hello world. So now we can just come up to here and we can click run, main, and then the console window will pop up. There we go. And as you can see right here, it printed hello world to the console. So that's kind of the basic of how print statement works. Very rudimentary, basic thing that you'll use all the time in programming. So if you didn't want to print a string, there's a few other things that you can do. You can add other stuff. So if you want to have two strings connected together, you could do a plus, and then you could do more quotes, and then you could print hello world twice. You could also just do this with one string, but for the sake of this example, we're going to do it like this. Just click the green button here, and now it's going to print hello world, hello world. Great. So the other thing that you can do is you can print non-string values, which are numbers predominantly. So you can just put a 5 in here. So when it's not letters, you don't have to put quotation marks. You can just put the value in there, come down here, and it prints the number. So if we wanted to now, using the plus operator that I showed before, you can do 5 plus 5, and this will actually do the math, and it will print 5 plus 5, which is 10. And you can put any operator you want in here, 5 divided by 5, for example, which will equal 1, which is correct. Of course, it's a computer. They don't do wrong math. So that's pretty simple, and there's one more thing with print statements, is that inside of here you can see it says print line. The LN at the end stands for line, and it's very important for the specific type of print statement because this is valid too. You can remove the line part. You can put your text in here, and then you can do it like this. So when you remove the line part, it will print all on the same line. So rather than making a new line, it's just going to happen on the same line. You can see hello world is on the same line, but if I were to make these both print line statements, they happen on different lines. Generally, you'll use print line. It's usually more useful, but keep in mind that print exists as well. Okay, moving on now, the next thing that we're going to talk about and the final thing for the getting started video is variables. Yeah, so let's take a look at that in the other screen. Now let's talk about variables. If you've done any amount of math, I'm sure you've used variables before, but they're a little bit different in computer science and in Java. A variable is just like a box. It stores a value and a type. So in real life, say you have a box and you can write on this box a label, like CDs. You can have a box of CDs and you've written with a marker on the side CDs. And inside of this box, you're going to have all your CDs. And you're also going to give it a name, right? It's going to be like CDs classical or classical CDs. Or some variety of that, and then you would put all of your classical CDs into that box for organizational purposes, and that way whenever you go to find it, like you're looking for a specific song, you can just go and look in that box for classical CDs because you know that's where they're going to be. And variables work just like that, so we can have boxes and we can give them types, like we gave our real life box a type of CD. We're going to label these boxes with data types like integers, strings, and booleans. Integers are just numbers, strings are just multiple characters, and booleans are true or false values. And now we can put things inside of these boxes once we've given them a type, like 100 in our integer box, or hello in the string box, or true in the boolean box. So now we've created these variables or boxes that store this type of value, and the value is 100, which is very useful. So now how you would code this in Java is using this syntax. So you would have type, you declare your type like integer, string, boolean, what have you, and then you would give it a name, like say you wanted like a variable that had your name in it. You'd give it type string, you'd give it name, and then you would give it value, whatever your name is, and it would store your name. So you can see how you would do that just right here. String name equals equinox. So now this just creates a variable called name equinox. It's pretty simple, pretty basic, very useful though. So now let's go take a look at that in the IDE so you can see how that actually works. Back in the IDE, continuing with variables, before I showed you the syntax, which I'm just going to write here in a comment, it was type name equals value. This is just the basic syntax, and if you put 2 dashes in front of something, it's a comment, it gets ignored by the by Java. It just ignores it, so you can just write stuff out. So let's see, I'm going to make a variable called age, for example. So we're going to declare it as an integer, which you would do by int, and I'm going to name it age, and age is going to be equal to a value, like 20, for example, right? So now this stores the value of 20 in the box or variable age. And now we can actually access this value. So let's go back to, I'm sure you remember the print statements we did a few moments prior. And you can just write age right in here. And now this will print the value. So we're just going to take the value out of the box and print it to the console. Yep, 20. We can access these values. So let's add another one. All right, let's make a person here. So we're gonna give this person like a name. This person's name is gonna be John, and John is 20 years old. So now we could say here, so like name, and then you would do plus, and then you would add name, just like that. So now this is going to print name, and then it's going to access, it's going to take the value out of the name box, and it's going to print it to the string. So now we can do the same thing again with age. Okay, that looks good. And now, there you go, name, John, age, 20. And now you have the makings of a database system. It's a very simple start with variables, but you'll probably get more comfortable with them the more you use them. It's relatively easy to understand, I think. Let's see, we can do more things. So we could have int a equals 10, int b equals 10, and then we could do c equals a plus b, and then let's just print c to the screen. There you go, 20. So you can see it printed the values of a plus b. So you can set variables equal to other variables, and this allows you to do math inside of the variable declaration, which is really helpful. And you can put any operator you want. You could do multiplication or division or subtraction. Yeah, just whatever floats your boat, I guess. And that's yeah, pretty basic. And I'm gonna go over like all the different types of variables. There's quite a few. You really don't need to know very many of them. But the primary ones, they're called primitive data types. So integers are one of them. Let's see, we have floats. And floats are cool because you can do, you see, decimal points with them. Integers, it'll give you an error if you try to add a decimal point. But floats can store decimal point numbers. Just be aware you do have to add an F to the end of it so that the computer knows that it's a float. Same thing with a double, except you don't have to put a letter afterwards. or we've got bytes. Let's see, or we've got booleans. And these are the ones that store true or false values. So you can have conditionals. And let's see, we've got characters. Characters are different from strings because they only store one letter. That's it. You got one letter. They've got an undefined size. Just any one character can fit into here. And they're denoted by single quotes rather than double quotes. And then we've got, last but not least, longs. So the differences between all of these, so integers are it's defined as a 32-bit whole number. And that just means bits are just, they're like one binary digit. You don't really have to know anything about that, but just one bit is one binary digit. So that's the maximum size, 32 binary digits, which is huge, by the way. That is a huge number. Integers will probably be more than enough to satisfy your numerical needs. But if for any reason you need to go bigger than 32 bits, you can double it with 64 bits. And 64 bits is a massive number, but just keep in mind that they're a little bit slower than integers. So if you really don't need a long, don't use a long. And same goes for bytes. Bytes are just 8 bits, so they're much smaller than integers, and they store much less numbers, but like I said, they take up less memory, so there is a benefit there. Then you've got floats and doubles, which store decimal point numbers. Floats store a 16-bit number, and doubles store a 32-bit number. So there's no 64-bit decimal. Yeah, that's just kind of how it is. Booleans, they store true or false. Change this. And characters, they store the single letter. So those are all the primitive types. Now you might be a little bit surprised that strings are not among these. That's because strings aren't primitive data types. Actually, if under the hood, strings are actually just a sequence of characters, interesting enough. So they're made up of primitive data types, but they themselves are not primitive data types. So yeah, those are just kind of the main types of variables that you will use in Java and how to declare them. And I think that pretty much concludes this getting started episode. I hope you come back to watch the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.